Hello and welcome back to Party Chick Astrology. I'm Nina.
I'm Shaina.
And this is Lilith in the 4th house. Continuing on with our Lilith series. We're going through the signs, we're going through the houses. You're going to want to check them all out, and especially if you haven't already, you're going to want to check out the introductory video to this series, which is all about what Lilith is, the different kinds of Liliths, the origins, the myths, the stories, all that juicy stuff. We, on this series, are going through the Black Moon Lilith. That will also show up as your mean Lilith or your true Lilith. Definitely make sure to check out the introductory video to understand the nuances between those two.
We've got a bunch of links down below. We always say this, but they're still there. We got the Lilith playlist link if that's easier for you. We both have Instagrams. Nina has an astrology YouTube channel. I've got a bunch of other stuff that will be linked down below. Now, if you're interested in Cancer Lilith, that's just been put up. There are little distinguishers and differences, and I personally think especially with Cancer Lilith and 4th house Lilith, they do of course have their similarities, but I find them to translate pretty differently in a person, but we'll get into it.
I think that there are definitely things that we said in the Cancer Lilith video that will 100% resonate and be the same with the 4th house Lilith. There's going to be a lot of things that will probably repeat ourselves that we said in the Cancer Lilith, especially when we talked about, family dynamics and things that might have happened in your early development. However, the biggest differentiation I feel like with Cancer Lilith and 4th house Lilith is that with the 4th house Lilith, you have an extra flavor to go off of. I mean, that's the same with the Cancer Lilith. And the Cancer Lilith, it can be in any other house, and that will give it another flavor. But I just feel like there's a whole other energy infused in it,
Yes. I definitely think the main difference between the two, like we kind of talked a lot with the Cancer Lilith about it not being the most sexual, promiscuous Lilith. It almost can feel like you're overcompensating for possibly even a weaker Lilith. But I think the biggest difference is with 4th house Lilith, because it's in your 4th house, it's your roots. It's like really who you are. I don't think that's true at all. I think that these can be people that embody Lilith in the most organic, true way than probably any other Lilith house placement. Like, even 1st house Lilith, that's like right in front of you, but also 1st house is like what we put on. Lilith in the 4th house is just who you are. You very much feel and carry that Lilith wild, untamed energy with you.
Yeah, we also talked a lot about how Lilith in Cancer is really sweet, always like performing this sweet, nurturing niceness. That's not necessarily the case with the 4th house Lilith. I also think that what Shaina said is very true. When you have Lilith in the 4th house, that is part of you. That is part of your innate self. And you can even see, like when we talked about the Cancer Lilith celebrities in our Cancer Lilith video, we were mentioning people like Jennifer Aniston, woo, yay, Jenna Marbles, ha 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 ha. And then we went Charles Manson. Charles Manson was a Cancer Lilith in the 4th house. So you see, like, with Jennifer Aniston, it's like, yeah, she has a Cancer Lilith, she has some of these traits. Lilith isn't at the forefront of her character. Same thing with Jenna Marbles. But when you look at Cancer Lilith in the 4th house, or you look at a 4th house Lilith in general, that's when you see someone who's really embodying the characteristics of Lilith. It's something that's deeply innately in them and is going to make up for quite a large part of their roots and who they are.
The 4th house is all about your roots, and having Lilith in there, you literally come from a very Lilith-like, Lilith-y family. And so I've been trying to dress or put a shirt on like the Liliths. I could not find what I thought was the perfect shirt for this one. Honestly, this one was the best I could do because it said full of guilt. And I don't know if you're necessarily full of guilt, but you're full of a lot. So I was like, I guess, but I honestly would have preferred to wear something somehow like family, you know, oriented or that kind of thing, but I just didn't really have anything. I'm Jewish, so this is what I have, you know.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
That's your ode to family and heritage and roots, is your Jewish guilt.
Exactly. So that's the best I could do. I'm sorry. It's honestly, it's not my favorite, but I tried my best. The main similarity, I think, between Cancer Lilith and fourth house Lilith is just that troubled, hard childhood, that family dynamic and family structure that's just not very, I guess, the most desirable, not the most flowing, not the most easy, breezy, beautiful cover girl, you know? There's a lot more rocks in the way, and it can translate differently for everybody, you know what I mean? Which is why you have Lilith in a sign. I'll try to think of like good examples. Like if you have Lilith and Aries in the fourth house, the trouble that you have with family might be a lot of anger issues being passed down. People always like lots of drama being caused, lots of trouble with that. Whereas if you have like Lilith and Virgo, it's not going to be as eruptive. It's going to be like everybody is super critical, super like on your ass, making sure you're perfect. There's a lot of rules involved. You know what I mean? So it really talks to the sign, as does everything. But again, especially what Nina was saying with this placement, like the flavor of it is so important. The flavor, the sign that it's in really will demonstrate the kind of harmful, dramatic, high maintenance or whatever it may be kind of family structure you come from. But no matter what, there's gonna be some problems there.
Just worth reiterating, Lilith is that itch that you need to scratch, that thing that you lust after, and that lust and that drive to obtain that thing, those qualities even, are the fact that they were something that you were denied when you were younger. On top of that, when we look at Lilith in the houses, Lilith is a tricky little motherfucker, if you will. Lilith is perverted, it's dark and sexual, it's obsessive, it's nonsensical, and so those things are happening in your house of home. And home means your childhood home, which is your roots, your family, and the sense of, what's the right word for this? What comes to me is like that sense of innateness, that sense of like default in you. Because like the word that we use for fourth house oftentimes is comfort and safety. Those things don't necessarily come with a Lilith in the fourth house, because Lilith is definitely disrupting your sense of safety, your sense of peace. And what's happening with Lilith there is that there's a really dark, almost perverse energy. Let's dive right into the deep end here. We warmed up to this in the Lilith and Cancer video, but we've been filming for a little while, and something that was brought up there, which I think is relevant also for Lilith in the fourth house, is potentially some incest. We talked about that with Gemini Lilith as well, and Lilith in the third house, but the third house has more to do with siblings, and you know, can also just be like a feeling of incest. When it's in the fourth house, there could have been a very perverse, domineering, dark entity energy in your home environment that could have led you to have this very formative experience that informed your innate default self into being someone who doesn't feel safe, who feels like their safety was taken away from them, who feels like their boundaries were crossed. And with the fourth house symbolizing home and safety, to have such a dark force in there, it feels like something has just gone right through the four walls that are your home. Not just your physical home, but the home inside of your head, the home inside of your heart. So yeah.
Yeah, this is a super heavy energy. Like our fourth house, like in a very practical day-to-day term, it kind of is like, let's say you're coming home from school, you walk in the door, you throw down your backpack, and you like let out the sigh of relief, and then you automatically switch gears into your 4th house, you know? And having Lilith there, that's not, that's far from the most pleasant thing to come home to. And things with the 4th house, it's not like you come home to it. It's something that you're constantly feeling no matter where you go. You literally carry it with you. When you're out in public, you know, the 4th house is just a little bit more hidden. It's a little bit not, you know, it's obviously not as seen right there. But you'll always feel like you're bringing it around with you. So this is a very heavy energy. I think it can translate into a lot of fear as well. Fear because it's not a settling, comfortable, predictable energy. You know, you're used to always being uprooted. You're used to always kind of coming face to face with extraordinarily dark parts of yourself, of life, of the people around you, of your family. And this is somebody who I think can also be very much like the black sheep of the family, the odd one out, or even someone that is always the center of the family drama. If they're not starting the family drama, it's about them. You know, even if they're not trying to. Whatever it is that they're expressing or what they're doing, it takes that sign and it does it to the fullest. And so because of that, you'll find yourself possibly the center of attention in your family, but never in the most positive of lights, the most positive of situations. It's not like, oh, this person with Lilith in the 1st house is always the center of attention because they get great grades. Like, no, you know, you're the center of attention because, oh my God, this drama got out, or this gossip, or you said this to this person, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. And because Lilith is so subconscious, like I said, emphasis on the fact that you're rarely ever trying to actively do something unto others. Like, Lilith is very self-absorbed. So much to the point that it's like, when you are called out for those things, you're like, I wasn't even concerned with you, but you're making this about you now, you know?
Okay, I said this like pretty much verbatim in the Lilith and Cancer video, but since not everyone's gonna watch both videos and this is really pertinent to Lilith in the 4th house, I'll bring this up too. Another reason why Lilith in the 4th house will have family issues is, like I said, because Lilith is that thing that you are denied. And when you're denied 4th house things, you're denied that stability, you're denied that sense of familial love. So then you seek it, you lust for it, you long for it, so much so that you end up not having any kind of breaks to the situation, and you end up getting into some kind of trouble, getting into some bad situations. With Lilith in the 4th house, you can also get into some bad situations pursuing a sense of home, pursuing a new sense of family, because you don't have a great model of that from your actual family that you were born into. And so you can easily get into maybe like a group home situation, a roommate situation. You can build your own family, like with a husband or wife or whatever, and have your own kids, and then realize that you've gotten yourself into a bad situation because you sought after something that was familiar to you, and your familiarity, your comfort zone, which is a lot of what the 4th house is sort of toxic, is sort of dark, and has a lot of issues. And those issues, like I mentioned before, they can be of a sexually traumatic nature because Lilith is perverse and it's sexual. It can also be of a unhealthy power dynamic nature. Lilith in the 4th house can often pursue power in a larger unit, like power over a family, if you will. Like, think Charles Manson even, because in their home life, they were powered over. They were not given any space, is another good way of putting it, if that makes sense.
These are people that wind up really rejecting the typical family structure. Lilith so represents independence, and if you have Lilith in the 4th house, you don't even mean to, but you just act out of a very independent nature. It's what you need, it's what you crave, it's what you will always kind of act from. And so because of that, these people not only reject the family structure, but even if they try to embrace it, they don't do too well. You know, they weren't shown a very healthy family life, so they just don't really know how to conduct themselves within one later on. Again, because of that staunch independence. Their families might be very demanding of them, and they may need to reject their family later on in life for the sake of self-preservation, because their family and their roots can be very draining, very abusive. They can very much get stepped on in very different ways. Like I said, it doesn't always have to be the classic like abusive way. It could very much be like I kind of mentioned, it can be like super strict rules, just being a person that has a political view than the rest of your family. But because of that, in some way, you have been silenced.
So with Lilith in the 4th house, you're living with this energy inside of you. It's what you come home to. And so how do you deal with that energy? There can be multiple ways that this manifests. Some people can really embrace it, especially if you are a 4th house dominated person. You'll embrace your innate self and be like, I am my traumatic past, or I am this symbol of darkness. Almost. I am Lilith. Embrace this dark aspect of yourself, maybe even to a detrimental point. Or it can make confronting yourself very difficult. It can make getting vulnerable with yourself or looking back into your past. And our own past is where we get a lot of clues as to who we are and what makes us who we are. And if you're afraid to go back into your past, then you're essentially blocking yourself off from getting to know your present self and actually forming your future as well. So that's another way that Lilith in the 4th house manifests itself. It depends on, how aspected your Lilith is, how much it's talking to other personal planets, how much of a 4th house person you are in general by virtue of having Cancer planets or planets in the 4th house, or all of that good stuff. How in touch you are with your Lilith will also let you know how in touch you are with yourself. And your Lilith can prevent you from getting in touch with yourself if you aren't able to access it, if you're scared of accessing it. That being said, fully diving deep into I am Lilith is not the healthiest thing to do either. That leads you down some dark paths. Charles Manson, why is that the example that keeps coming up? I'm getting a school shooter visions when you really get too in touch with that darkness inside of yourself. My recommendation is that you cautiously go into your 4th house and gain an awareness of it. It's difficult with Lilith. Lilith is very nonsensical. Lilith is very hidden, especially in the 4th house at the bottom of your chart. That's a dark part of your chart in general. And so it's difficult to go into understanding Lilith, and for you with Lilith in the 4th house, go into understanding your past and yourself and your essence. But for you, you have to do that mindfully. I said this also in Lilith in Cancer, maybe with a professional, maybe with a therapist, so that you're not running away from your past and who you are and depriving yourself of getting to know yourself. And also you're not maybe subjecting yourself to something that can take you down a dark path. And that won't be the case for all of you, that you'll all be Charles Manson. But and maybe astrology helps, because that's a more detached way of getting to know yourself. But yeah.
Yes, to add on, because I completely agree with what Nina was saying, I think what can happen in a lot of ways is you kind of stalemate yourself to where you're like, both of them are really bad, so instead of doing either of them, I'll just hyper isolate myself, and I'll never go outside, and I'll never talk to anybody, and I'll never let anybody get close to me, and I'll never show the real me. Keep yourself so private and so isolated that you can then be turning into that other Lilith of that independence because you lack true human connection. And these are people that can be super sexual too, and super connected to themselves, and and benefit so much from exploring their sexuality with other people. And because it's in the 4th house, you know, we protect our 4th house, and especially with Lilith, you know, you may hyper protect it, that you're very, very cautious about who you let in and who you show that to. And so if you're doing that stalemate thing where you just hyper isolate yourself, you'll never explore a big piece of yourself, you know? It's all about that balance. Okay, so I'm kind of doing this a little bit earlier than we usually do, but that's because I just think that the people are very helpful, because we said so much of this 4th house Lilith has to do with the sign, the flavor, that kind of stuff. The number one person that when I saw this, I was like, I did a little thinking of myself, and now like I can't unsee it, and this is all I'm thinking of, is Donald Trump. Lilith in the 4th house, you know, we mentioned not having the best home structure, not having the best home life, but also Lilith is what you obsessively seek out. Lilith is your desire to have the best of that house. Like, you need it and you'll find it and you'll get it any way possible. Donald Trump literally got to live in the best house ever for 4 years. I know that's a very little, but we're all like, how did he get himself to the White House? His Lilith in the 4th house got himself the best fucking home. You know, he finagled his way, he manipulated his way. And also, his Lilith is within the same degree or two of the United States' rising sign. And I think that he's just a great example. Like, even the fact he tries to hide the fact that he was born into a wealthy family, that his dad was the one that really made all the money, and he just is the son, but he's trying to show and display like, oh no, I am the businessman, I did this, when in reality, he's trying to hide the fact that his Lilith in the 4th house, his daddy's always taking care of him. You know, there's somebody else he's relying upon in this dark past, and I'm sure his dad didn't get money in the most respectful way at all. You know, the way that they got their money, the way that he got his power, the way that he got to disputably the best home in the country, was through very dark and shady ways.
This is a little off topic also to the video, but it's also interesting that his Lilith is conjunct the United States rising, because the United States also has a progressed chart. And so to have it be conjunct the natal rising, and his whole slogan was "Make America Great Again." Great is, you know, a subjective term, but in the way that he was using it is just make America like it was originally back in the day.
Somebody else, Justin Bieber, has Lilith in the 4th house. And I was just thinking about his big song that he got big with, is literally called Baby. And like, he's just showing himself to be this very like nurturing, treat women right kind of figure. And even like his most recent song is about Yummy. And then he kept on posting all these pictures of babies on his Instagram feed to advertise it. Like, there's a little bit of a perverse, like,
a little bit,
not a little bit. Like, there's just this really kind of like hyper weird obsession with innocence with him, you know, and not only that, but people's obsession with his innocence when he was younger, and that whole voice change thing, like that was such a big deal. The way that he writes his songs, like when he tries to be sexual and when he tries to be like, oh, I'm now older, blah blah blah, like we still very much, it's that kind of 4th house thing, that Cancer-y thing of like, oh, but you're still little Justin. It feels like he's a very underdeveloped Lilith in the 4th house, you know?
Yeah, it also seems like it would be a safer kind of thing for young girls to lust over, you know?
Yes.
A safer Lilith.
Yeah.
A safer energy.
Yes.
To have that Lilith in the 4th house.
But I remember hearing things where, I don't remember where I heard this, so who knows if this is true or not. It was like after a concert or something, and she got picked to come to Justin Bieber's house after the concert, and then he got to just like line up the girls, and he would just point to the ones that he wanted to sleep with that night, and they would go to bed with him. And so that is a very like childish way to get what you want. Like, he never has to go after it. It's literally, his Lilith is just like given to him, you know? And I think that's also a very Lilith in the 4th house thing in some ways. Like, he's a much more privileged version of it, for like hyper privileged version of it for sure. I mentioned the Cancer Lilith like having trouble taking action against what you want, and I think maybe with Lilith in the 4th house, you might not even need to take action. It's not like you can't, you just have never been asked to, because it's just been given to you. You know, 4th house, we we just are a fourth house. We're really not trying. I wish I couldn't be my fourth house as much as I am. You know, you just get these Lilith experiences kind of handed to you, maybe.
His mom was a teen mom. Did you know that Shaina actually coughed on Justin Bieber?
I have a few stories. No. Another version of Lilith in the fourth house is, you know, Lilith is known to kind of be a little bit of, a bit of a liar, pretty deceitful. And Abraham Lincoln has Lilith in the fourth house, and we give him all the credit for freeing the slaves, being this like great, like, Emancipation Proclamation, this great figurehead of American freedom and civil rights. But he had slaves. He was trying to keep that under wraps, keep that hidden. But like, he wasn't listening to what he was saying. He was very much acting out of what he wanted, his Lilith, you know? Lilith and Gemini, he had a community of people doing things for him, working for him, even though he was trying to seem like, I think he's either Aquarius Sun or Aquarius Rising or possibly both, like, all for this, all for that, when in reality he was very much acting upon his Lilith.
Right, and that Lilith ends up being hidden to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's his secret.
Monica Lewinsky has her Lilith in Capricorn in the fourth house, and oh my god, did we do that girl dirty. She had this, like, I can't think of the word, a rendezvous with the president, fourth house, you know, Capricorn, this person of high esteem, high regard, high status, behind closed doors, you know, this taboo experience, but it was completely outed. Sometimes it can go the opposite, and you can be very much outed for your Lilith, and she is very much known for that. I feel like there's a lot of talk of like she wasn't the only one. So I think what I was mentioning earlier on of like just those Lilith experiences come to you, she could have been very much just where it just like he kind of landed in her lap. And I think I even read something where he was kind of more pursuing her anyways. But she's the one that has like that Lilith rap on her, you know?
Yeah, I watched a documentary on the whole thing a little while ago, and I got like a whole different perspective of her attitude throughout the whole thing. Like there was a lot of slut shaming, but she thought she was in a relationship. It really painted this picture of her being quite naive to the whole situation of what was actually going on. And I think that speaks to potentially unhealthy sense of security to begin with. You know, call it what it is, daddy issues.
Yeah.
You know? And there is definitely a betrayal of her privacy in that.
And her trust with him too, you know?
Yes, for sure.
On a little bit of a lighter note, Bam Margera has Lilith in the fourth house. I was watching an MTV Cribs of like a compilation of a few people from Jackass. And first you have like Steve-O, and he's just living in the shittiest apartment, like shittier than like the guy that you fucked last Saturday. Like it's just like garbage, right? The next person they go to, this person doesn't even have a home. He's giving a tour of his car. Right? And then you go to Bam Margera, who is a Cancer rising with a Libra Lilith in the fourth house, as well as a Libra stellium in the fourth house. And he literally, like, it's the Bam castle. Like, he has this fucking pimped out home. And then he even has a whole interview with somebody that he's like, oh yeah, this guy's been crashing at my place for like a year and a half now. You know, so giving of his home, willing to let anybody stay, willing to let the MTV crew come in. He literally has a show that takes place in his hometown. He made his hometown famous. Lilith is also is always seeking truth, you know, is always looking for what's right and trying to expose things. So with Lilith in the fourth house, you are very much like a truth seeker. You want to expose the lies. You want to get to the real root of things. And two people that I think really represent this is the documentary director Michael Moore, and George Carlin, who's a comedian, but he's more of just like almost his own political activist in a very Taurus way. And I think, you know, these people are always trying to expose things, expose America, let everyone know the truths of what's happening behind the scenes. You know, Michael Moore made a whole documentary about 9/11 and Columbine and all that stuff. And George Carlin is always talking about like the gross underbelly of what America really is and what capitalism really is. And so I think there is also a major truth-seeking nature to Lilith in the fourth house as well. You know, I feel like also though that might be something where you find such grossness within yourself. You know, you might even be a little bit disgusted and grossed out by who you are because you're always carrying this obsessive Lilith thing, that you might do something where you're just trying to then hyper expose everybody else's ugliness and truth within themselves as well, which I think is also what they were kind of doing. Because George Carlin always talks about capitalism, but that motherfucker is like a Taurus stellium, so he definitely cares about his things more than you probably do, which is probably why he's going on about it all the time.
Yeah, this surprisingly is a collection of quite political figures, and Justin Bieber.
Yeah, and Nancy Reagan has it too, so that's another example. Yeah, true, very political, which I think is all about that truth, like, I am right, and so I need to seek out my right and tell you guys all why I am right and why I am this, you know?
Something that Lilith and the fourth house have in common is that they're both about the underbelly.
Yeah.
You know, Lilith is the dark underbelly of our psyches and of our feminine nature as well. The fourth house also speaks a lot to these feminine properties of nurture and safety and home. Having this kind of intuitive combination of these two things that really speak to the underbelly of life. I think what Shaina said is probably quite accurate.
I was looking into it, and there can be this kind of like odd relationship with the mother or with the nurturing figure where it can be almost casual. You may like call your mother by their first name kind of situation, but yet that's coming from an initially very strained relationship. I'm not saying this is true with everything, but there is that stigma where it's like if you call your parent, especially your mother, by their first name, like that's a big sign of disrespect. It makes sense. Like if you have somebody with Lilith in the fourth house, that kid is going to very much go against the typical family ideals. They're gonna, like I keep saying, they're like the black sheep of the family. And so from that becomes like less of a, mother-child relationship and more like a we live together kind of relationship where that casual, strained thing can go on. You can go back and forth between being overly favored. You're the favorite child. You're obsessed over. You're babied. You're so nurtured. You're so taken care of. You're so protected. You're so sheltered, to flopping to the other side where you're the least favorite. You're the most hated. You're constantly getting all the grief. You're being forgotten about. You're being neglected. And I think that with Lilith in the fourth house, it's both. It's one extreme or the other. You're never just being properly nurtured and taken care of and, being seen as an individual, and you say make some mistakes and you don't. No, it's just a very turbulent home life and relationships with the people in your family, especially the mother, of course, but yeah.
Warning, if you have like a child with Lilith in the fourth house, I feel like these are the angstiest kinds of teens. Like once they get into that phase of getting any sort of independence, especially when that independence is also coinciding with the time of their life that their hormones are supercharging, you're gonna get some pretty angsty, rebellious, maybe even difficult to deal with teens.
I feel like that's just true with them always. Like, this is the perpetual angsty teen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somehow they were like that when they were 5, and they didn't even grow out of that by the time they were 30. You know what I mean? Lilith is also what we attract. And so this can be, we talk about Lilith in Cancer, like they kind of attract the opposite. They attract almost like people that don't know how to properly nurture, don't know how to properly care for them. Whereas I think Lilith in the fourth house attracts incredibly nurturing figures. But I think that they will very much reject that because of that thing that I mentioned, that independence. They have this desperate want for independence. So they're constantly going to be rejecting this nurturing figure, rejecting it. I don't want it. I want to nurture myself. Da, 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 da. But some major advice to Lilith in the fourth house is that you need to learn to open yourself up and allow the nurturing person, even just allowing them to love you. I feel like this might be somebody who feels like they don't deserve any kind of love. They don't deserve a soft hand. I haven't treated them well and I'm a shitty person, so then I don't deserve this. So you might even push it away. But you really need to, I think a life kind of goal or mission with this is very much learning to accept that and own up to it, in the sense of owning up to the fact that you deserve it and getting comfortable again, letting people in, opening yourself up, because that's something that you very much will not want to do or feel comfortable doing.
Yeah, what's interesting is that Lilith is often what we lust after because it wasn't given to us. And a lot of times that can look like an insecurity and like a desperation to just like, I need this, I need this, I need this. But Lilith isn't as outwardly, I guess, desperate. Lilith is much more, even if it's inwardly insecure, it's going to act out of all of the righteousness and entitlement, even if it doesn't feel all of that entitlement on the inside. With it in the 4th house, it's going to act fully entitled to a sense of safety, a sense of innate power, a sense of all of that stuff. I think especially in the 4th house, it's going to have all of that entitlement in the world, because it's a weird thing to have something in the 4th house that also represents something that you weren't innately given, because the 4th house is your innate self. So it's like outwardly you weren't innately given the things that the 4th house represents, but you were still born with all of that entitlement for those things. I think that sometimes Lilith might manifest itself that way.
Justin Bieber. Okay, I'm not trying to go on a long ass story, but like I did a cover shoot with Justin Bieber like just when he started to get famous. Like he had like 2 songs out, and that boy was the most entitled piece of shit I have ever met. When we first started the shoot, all the girls loved him. They were so excited, and then by the end of the shoot, none of the girls liked him anymore because he acted like such a dick. And we were so confused because we were like, you just got famous. How can you be acting this entitled? And that's just because of that thing that you mentioned. Like they get it and they instantly are like, yes, I've deserved this always. You know what I mean? Finally,
yeah.
You know?
It's at your roots. It's like you're innately powerful, even though like Justin Bieber was born to a single teen mother and probably wasn't given everything. And probably wasn't given everything that he wanted or blah blah blah, but as soon as he got it, he was like, I was always entitled to this.
Yes, and not appreciative of it at all either. I could tell he took it for super granted. Like he was like begging everybody. He was like, stream yummy, I'm entitled to your streams, I'm entitled to your time, I don't have to make good things, I just get it, I just deserve it. Yeah, anyways. Also, to think about Lilith is also the thing that you want to do all the time. So if it's in the 4th house, it's not like it's in a different house where when you encounter this house, you want to do your Lilith. It's like you always just want to do your Lilith all the time, and that's it consistently. So if that's all you want to do, anything outside of that is kind of like forced. So this can create very strong people, not scared. You know, as much as I said you can be very fearful, I think that it can be that thing where it's like, you know, maybe when you're born, this is a bad example, but like you were really scared of scary movies. Lilith in the 4th house isn't going to be the person that's like, I'm scared of scary movies, so I'm never gonna watch them. Lilith in the 4th house is like, oh, I'm scared of this? Bitch, you thought you were scared of this. Time to sit down and watch every scary movie so you can overcome this. You know, very much willing to tackle things head on. As much as it's not an adaptable placement, because it's so not adaptable, you are then forced to constantly be adapting, you know?
Right, and that's a very popular form of therapy is immersion therapy.
Yes.
When it comes to anxieties, when it comes to fears. And I know that Shaina just highlighted the positive things about that. And I don't want to be like, not everyone is going to be a Charles Manson, but I've been on a true crime kick. And there's this story, I was watching Eleanor Neely, she does, or Neil, she does true crime on YouTube. And she posted recently a video. These guys, they were afraid of heights. And they decided that they were going to do like immersion therapy on themselves. And they were going to expose themselves to heights. And then once they did that to the point that they overcame their heights, they were like, oh my God, this is such an empowering feeling to face what we fear and overcome it. Let's start a murder spree.
Jeez, yeah, exactly. Like just going to such extremes and it's coming from such a place of selfishness, that Lilith selfishness of like, I'm trying to get over my fear so much that I'm willing to quite literally put other people's lives at the most imminent risk to get over this, you know?
Yeah. And then their friend was like, well, I'm afraid of blood. And they're like, we're going to have to do some immersion therapy of blood with you and brutally kill a bunch of animals and people.
That is so selfish. So it feels like this is prideful thing, but maybe you should just like let that fear be. Like, I don't know.
It's okay to be afraid of blood. We all are to an extent.
Yeah. Something else that is huge that we haven't touched on much, very strong turbulent emotions. You know, the 4th house it's ruled by the moon. And, you know, the moon is always, like we mentioned, seeking comfort, seeking stability, want things to be okay. So you're always seeking this emotional place of rest. But that's never going to happen. So anytime that any little emotion comes over you, it's just like overcoming, because you're like, normally in the 4th house when something happens, we're like, oh no, you might be in a sign like, oh no, I got to do something with this. Well, Lilith in the 4th house, it's like, oh no, my life is over because I'm feeling one emotion at all. My emotional life is not perfectly balanced. And so just going to, like Nina was like, with that last example, going to such extremes to try to balance things out, you know? Like, can't we just, you know, stay on this ladder a little bit? Like, no, this is like, it's like this kind of person. These people can come from families of extreme poverty or extreme wealth, or having a little bit of both. Like, I feel like Donald Trump is the exact example of, he has had extreme wealth in his life, but he does not know what to do with it. And because of that, he is low-key experienced a lot of poverty. Like, he had that whole hotel that went under and he lost all that money too. I watched something about it a long time ago. I can't remember it. But, like, just these insane extremes. Whereas if he didn't, you know, put himself out there so much, he would have just lived a nice life. But instead, you know, he's searching for this extreme greatness in his head, you know? So he's willing to literally, you know, he put everyone's life at risk, and like so many immigrant families, so many this and that, just so he could get this extreme greatness and manipulate people into loving him, you know? These people also, might, you know, do one or the other. They'll either sacrifice their career for their family's well-being, or they're extremely sacrifice their family's well-being for their career. Obviously, Donald Trump, like, sacrificed his family's well-being for his career. Even Charles Manson literally did that. He sacrificed the Manson family's well-being, their life outside of prison, for his career as Charles Manson. I know we don't think of it as a career, but I mean, we've pretty much put him in infamy because of it. So he very much sacrificed people that loved him very much, these 4th house people, in the name of him getting his name out there.
Also, he had, his big thing was that he worked with the Beach Boys. He wanted to be a musician.
Yeah.
Sharon Tate's murder was, oh my God, this is so 4th house Lilith. He just wanted to kill whoever lived in that house.
Right. Yes.
Oh my God. Because he wanted to murder whoever was in that house, because that house used to belong to someone from the Beach Boys sphere of his life.
Yes.
Where he was rejected from being a musician, his career.
It was literally an act of revenge on that home. He targeted the home. Yeah, that is crazy, yo.
Astrology is real.
Yeah, no, that's insane. This is a little bit off topic, but I was thinking about this last night, how the house that Lilith is in, I think that we find the opposite house to be a lot easier. And that's like the house that kind of comes to us, but we're always going to inevitably seek and search for the best of the house that our Lilith is in, when in reality we kind of have the goodness of the other house, but we kind of maybe reject that goodness because we want that opposing house so much, if that makes sense. Janet Jackson has Lilith in the 4th house, and that's a toxic family. Like, you know what I mean? Like, all these kids, they're all forced to perform, they're all forced to do this, they're all kind of pitted against each other, there's a lot of rivalry, there's a lot of competition. I think the Jacksons all experienced their childhood being taken away from them, I mean, in a similar way that Millie Bobby Brown did, of being exposed to fame and celebrity stuff so early, you know?
Yeah, if you missed our Lilith and Cancer video, Millie Bobby Brown has Lilith and Cancer.
With Lilith in the 4th house, you might not have the strongest Lilith, like maybe it's not aspecting much, or it's not conjunct much, or it just doesn't Lilith will definitely play a prominent role in the rest of your family. Like, look at your family's Lilith. They probably have a pretty strong Lilith, because it was literally what's passed down onto you. And because of that, if you have like parents with a strong Lilith, they're going to parent you out of what's best for them. And so because of that, the lines of what's right and what's wrong and what to do and what not to do are a little blurred. Your parents might do that thing of like, oh honey, you know, you're not allowed to cuss. But they might be like, honey, you're not fucking allowed to cuss, you little shitbag. Where it's just like, you cuss all the time, why can't I cuss when you're doing it? Like, rules are a little bit more nonsensical. Like, so you tend to take what people say with a grain of salt, whereas you might, you know, be suspect that everyone's lying to you, which I think goes back to the Michael Moore, George Carlin thing, where everyone's lying to me. Where's America's truth? What is actually coming out of here? You know, not trusting what people are saying. I don't trust my own mom and what she told me as a kid. So why would I trust this? Why would I trust you if I couldn't even trust my own mom? These are people who always are eternally living in the gray area. And maybe that's why I wear this shirt, because it's gray. Let's put that has a reason. Because, you know, life is never black and white. You wish you were almost given more of a guideline for things, but you find that everything lives within this gray area, and so it can be very confusing on to how to go about your life, which is why I think it can create this, sometimes, like I mentioned, that stalemate of isolation where you just don't really get close to anybody. Even if you're putting yourself out there all the time and you're seen in the public eye, that doesn't mean you're getting close to people. That doesn't mean you're being intimate and honest with them. In fact, it probably means that you're doing that way less, you know?
I also think that what's interesting, I keep bringing up this kind of, I guess it's also a stalemate of Lilith is what you weren't inherently given, and yet it's in your 4th house. And you're pursuing it. You're pursuing a place where you can feel comfortable and vulnerable and safe. And yet, that is not what Lilith is about. Lilith is about powering over people. So it's almost like you're pursuing being head of a family and being able to control other people in a family, whether that is the Manson family, or like take a shot every time that Nina's like Charles Manson has Lilith in the 4th house, or whether that even is like your team, like Justin Bieber, whether that is political, the country. I think that this is a placement that really warrants actively seeking self-awareness, because Lilith is so nonsensical, and so it's hard to make sense of yourself when it is in your 4th house.
Yeah, like, and if this video has seemed a little harsh and extreme, and it's because this is a very harsh and extreme placement. I think that Lilith in a water sign or a water house is one of the hardest to deal with.
When you're itching a water sign Lilith or water house Lilith scratch, it's like oozing, and you're like, ugh.
Give yourself a little pat on the back for getting through life this long. But yes, that is our Lilith in the 4th house video.
Truthfully, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching.
You'll see us next time, hopefully, if you stick around.
I found a new way to say we'll talk to you guys next time. That's what we do.
Oh, we'll talk to you guys next time. I love that.
Talk to you very, very soon.
Oh, that's sweet. Okay, bye.